you're approaching the Axis Mundi, the sacred place, Luigi Ming, where we come together. The genesis of this was the men's group. They wanted to have a sacred fireplace. So we started out with a sacred fire. And then they had a vision of a place where we could have ceremony also. And it evolved over time. It just didn't happen overnight. That we went to London to look at Scanadut. And Scanadut is a recreation of a Haudenosaunee village. And they have a similar setup, a palisade like this, but with a little maze coming in and built a little differently. And they said, let's do that. The Haudenosaunee, that is cool. So I said, do you guys know how much work that is? Like, that's an incredible amount of work. So they said, no, let's fundraise, let's do it. Let's do it. And so a fellow wanted to get married, and he asked me to do the ceremony. Ouija bringing together ceremony. And when we went to this guy's property, cedar trees, thousands of cedar trees. And I got talking with him and I said, listen, the men have a vision. What would you charge for, we'd come and help you, of course, but what would you charge for the trees? And he offered, okay, $10 a tree. So he knew what it was for. So we collected them. The vision was to have it set up like a native stonehenge. Axis Mundi, you have the crater pole in the middle. Each pole would represent a day in the year. So astronomically, it's also a tool. It's the medicine wheel pushed out. So when you enter, you approach this space, you come in the eastern doorway. We always enter this way. Unless you're a contrary, you would come in that door. Contrary is against the flow of life, and that's a different society. So we enter this way because we are making a spiritual contract saying yes to life. So just by coming in that door, we've all made a spiritual contract to say yes to life. So without even doing a prayer or a ceremony, you have let the spirits and all of creation know that you are an instrument of light and that you seek the light. So you come in, and what Jesus did there, you greet the crater pole. Sun dancers, they do this, but you can do it in any other way. Do offerings, anything that resonates with you. So when you stand in this position here, with the crater pole to your left, so it's close to your heart, and you gaze out this way through the opening. So on the longest day of the year, the summer solstice, the sunrise will come up with this pole right here on the edge. On the shortest day of the year, in the winter, the December 22nd, the sun will rise here on this pole. And in the middle here is the equinox. So this is the path of the sun as it comes and rises and falls. That's east. Wabanong, Zawanong, Ngabianong, Gwaednong, Jamdado, Skeki Kwe, and Shnabe. Those are the 7 directions. And the last direction is yourself, because you're putting yourself in the middle of creation, because it points to a greater truth that you are the creator. So we built this place. That's a star lodge. And this is, I carry 3 lodges. This was the last lodge that was passed to me. And it has to do with star teachings. That lodge over there is the woman's lodge. Sheila runs that lodge because she she's a sun dancer, and they have Western Doorway Lodge. So we have the male and the female. So we have that balance here. This is the altar. We use that in ceremony. That was the dirt from inside the lodge there. So we put a red cloth here. We put all our tools on here, and we go inside the sweat lodge and have our ceremony. The lodge in itself is a myriad of teachings. These are levels, kind of like the chakras in a body. Each level has a color. Each level has a teaching to it. When this particular ceremony came to us, lost in time, was brought to us by the little boy. And the little boy is usually honored at every ceremony here. We remember that. We remember that legend. So as we work this, we remember the legends of the little boy, and we place a Neshomas here to represent the little boy. What happened is, before the moon came, or just after the moon came, there was a great shaking of the earth. People were getting ill. You would fall down. You would die. They weren't living long. So he asked the elders if he could go and fast. He was 7. And they said, no, you're too young. He kept asking. And finally they relented. So he went out on the land, and he fasted, and he had a vision. And in his vision, he was brought into this lodge. And if you picture that as a big ball, it goes underneath too. So as above, as below, is Hermetic teachings, I know, but it's the same thing that we have. So he brought this vision back, and well, he woke up on a crescent of rocks, and he was near death. He reached up and grabbed some cedar, gave him some sustenance, and he came back from that near-death experience he had. So he came back to the people, and he gave them his vision of the sweat lodge. And at that time, it was just men that did it. Now there's women's sweats, but those are different ceremonies, different energy. But it only enriches the culture because they do different work in there. So we're all here to do what we're all here to do.
So we can too explain about like the conduct of like, because like a lot of people when they come to ceremony think there's like a proper way, and the thing is about respecting and honoring the teachings of that particular lodge. Because I think that's what you're getting at too, is that lodges are different, they're similar, but they're all in different music.
Yeah. So when you're approaching a lodge and you're not sure of what that lodge is, like some people will come here and know what that is by just looking at it. They have the teachings. Other people don't have the teachings. So always approach it with respect. And if you don't know, ask. So like there's what we talked about with the medicine wheel, the spirit pathways. So there's a spirit pathway here. It's marked out by the cedar. So when you're at the lodge and you see a cedar trail like this, don't cross that. We go in clockwise with this particular lodge. So you would start out here, you would offer your tobacco, and you would come around, honor the creator, pole, axis mundi, little boy, yourself, and you'd traverse around here, and then you would go into the lodge. And then when you come out, it's like a infinity symbol that path you walked. We put the cedar down because cedar is a protector. If you're having a mixed sweat, always use cedar. because women's energy is so powerful and strong that it can affect others. So in order to protect the men from that power, that Sophia power, that power that is beyond our understanding, that can bring life but it can also take life. So they're instruments of bringing life into the world. So we do this to protect the men in there, and cedar is a protection. People put it over their doors. They put it in their shoes when they're on rocky ground. It's like a plastic coating on a copper wire.
So it's called gijik, right? Gijik. Cedar, the word in the language is gijik. Gijik means the sky, right? Gijik also refers just to the day. And I wondered about why it was called that. And I was talking to Betsy, and I said, is it because it's the sky world medicine? And she said, that's exactly it. And she told me the story you just said. And he said, when that little boy woke up, the first thing that he had was that medicine. And that was from Sky World. And so that's why we call it gijik. And it's one of those things when you...
It's like manna.
When you translate it into English, right, it's just cedar. But in the language, it's all these different words because it's related to it. It's the word for the sky is the same word for cedar. And people wonder why. It's because it's its association with, with that higher place. And it's true that the protection that cedar has is like, there's the physical medicinal properties. It also keeps bugs away and other things. But then it is too, it's like, they say when they conduct it, and they conduct the sweat, like whoever's conducting it, they're taking their life into their hands. I never understood that for a long time. I still don't really, but I think a part of it is because of all the work that you do in there. It really is like, whoever conducts it is really taking on that responsibility.
When I was first past the lodge, the practice was to fast for 4 days, no water, no food. So you come to that veil, that edge. So that's why sunrise and sunset is so important to us. Mm-hmm. It's the thinning of the veil between the worlds. Mm-hmm. So when that Bidabun happens, that crack before sunrise and sunset, that's when the world's thin. And you can access that more. So what a conductor does, he goes to that thinning place. It's practical. It's easier. Yeah. You can have a sweat any time of the day. However, if you do it at certain times, it just makes it easier. Mm-hmm. So it's easier on the conductor. So when they do this, they're reenacting what the little boy did when he came close to death. So you're doing the same thing. You're reenacting that. You're coming close to death yourself in order to channel, because you're channeling to make this happen. And there's different lodges with different ceremonies. Like for the men, we try to link up one mind, one thought, one prayer. There's no cedar on the ground. Everyone is linking up. Mm-hmm. That's very dangerous too, because you could have somebody in there that is not ready to say, I give my life up. Mm-hmm. They're still in this world and they want to hang on and they want to live. What you're trying to do is get everybody like-minded in there that are willing, in this moment, I can die. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. So when you have that, something special happens because everybody's agreed. If a lightning bolt comes down and kills us all, we're okay with that. We know who we are. So we do a shadow of that with different lodges. That's pointing to that. So when you're introduced to it, you only know a little bit. And that's the way it should be, because it's too rich. You don't give a baby a steak.
That's what I heard people say, because when I got into my pipe, I was like, what do I do with it? What do I do? And they're like, don't run. They're like, it'll figure itself out. Just don't run. Yeah. Just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And nobody can tell you how to run your pipe. Mm-hmm. You learn that. It's a learning. And I, as other pipe carrier, can tell you like what practices to do and that, but it won't mean anything to you. You have to experience it.
You take it into here, right?
Yeah. So that's why it's very frustrating, because they don't tell you. They give you no information. You ask a question, they tell this big story about something that doesn't even seem related to your question. And it's like, okay, thank you, Neshomas.
You know, you do that too, eh? Like you tell these
Yeah,
big
you
riddles.
talk around, yeah. Because I've learned you steal the teaching from them.
Mm-hmm.
You think you're helping them, you're calling it a good thing when you're actually harming them by answering the question directly. It's through the experience of it, of you working with your pipe. That is how you're really going to know it. I could tell you everything that around that and what that means and what you'll learn using your pipe, but it'll go in one ear and out the other. It'll
go into an ego place, like look at right, not into doesn't
exactly.
You don't do
yes.
Work. That makes sense.
And I would be hurting you by doing that.
That makes sense.
So we step back and allow you to work with your pipe. So you learn by trial and error.
But this isn't that's important because we're trying to understand like how do our people learn. And I think it's a really good point, Ken, is that we give people the go ahead to figure it out. You know, not to be like you're wrong. This is how you do it. But it's like maybe he was talking last night. His dad kept talking to him when he thought he was ignoring him, but he slowly realized he was getting on this path. And it was like his father gave him that space to make those things. And you know, when I think about that, that's how we teach. And I was talking about this with Dad. Is one of his worst qualities is he doesn't explain stuff to you. But one of his best qualities, he doesn't explain stuff to you. Right?
Yeah.
Because there's a part where he teaches by showing you. He still needs to learn to communicate in here, but that's how he did it. Like my relationship with the bush and being on the land wasn't like him being like, you need to go out there. He just kept taking me out there until the point I was just going out there because it was just my home. But that makes a lot of sense, Ken. And it's also like when you're at ceremony and there's always that one guy who knows everything, but is so far like so not doing his healing work. Like I'm like, all the people who really know, they always like say like, this is the little bit I know, right? And you said this too. You're like, this is just what I know. This is just here. And it's a different way of doing it.
It's a paradox. The ones that know don't talk. The ones that don't know talk. So
well, I was telling Robbie that because I was talking a lot and I was doing a similar thing. And he's like, Uncle, you really know a lot. And I said, I know it up here, nephew. If I really knew it, I wouldn't be talking about it so much. I was like, I'm repeating it to you because I'm also learning.
Yes, because there's no teacher, there's no student.
Yeah.
There's just the learning that arises of the coming together.
Yeah.